3 spine-chilling true stories of sinister blackouts, unexplained nightmares reveal Jane's quiet life in Elmwood slowly warped into a bizarre nightmare. A seemingly peaceful suburb turned ominous as blackouts became an all-too-frequent visitor, invading every part of her routine. It started with the whisper of darkness. One moment the kitchen was filled with the cheerful hum of the fridge, the next it was swallowed whole, leaving her only with the echoes of her children's laughter faded into silence. Each blackout came wrapped in a storm, luring her into a false sense of security that would snap like a brittle twig. The first unsettling night turned into panic when the winds picked up and dark clouds rolled in, blocking the last glimmer of daylight. As she watched Clara and Max's faces transform into worried expressions, eyes wide, breaths quickening, Jane felt an unsettling dread settle in her stomach. That was when it started, the scratching sounds. Like tiny claws clawing at wood. They came from Mr. Thompson's yard next door, faint but distinct, mingling with the howling wind. Was it her imagination? Or was something genuinely lurking just beyond the shadow of her home? Days passed, but fear became a regular part of Jane's life. The whispers of neighbors turned into hushed conversations about eerie shadows appearing in the streets during blackouts. Was it just Elmwood's erratic power grid, or something darker? She tried to reassure herself, convincing Clara and Max that it was nothing, just storm noises. But as she tucked them into bed each night, her heart raced, knowing that outside lurked a fear she couldn't name. Then came the storm that cracked Elmwood in half. Jane prepared for another late shift at the diner while the skies rumbled menacingly. She could sense it, a thick tension hanging in the air. Before she left, she clutched Max and Clara tight, whispering reassurances even as doubt clung to her. The moment she stepped outside, lightning sliced the dark sky, illuminating fleeting shadows that darted through the streets. It was over in a blink, but it left her shaking, the hairs on the back of her neck prickling. Once her shifts ended, Jane returned home to find another blackout had ensued. The power failed her, leaving her with nothing but the cold light of her phone, its glow flickering like a dying ember. She fought against the feeling of vulnerability creeping in, but it gnawed at her like a persistent predator. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just then, a loud thump resonated from outside, shaking the window panes. Jane paused, clutching her phone tighter, its light barely cutting the suffocating darkness. She peered through the curtains, her breath hitching as she caught sight of Mr. Thompson under the flickering street lamp. Shadows danced around him, he seemed entranced by something unseen, whispering softly to the air. Her heartbeat quickened, fear reached a fever pitch. What was he doing? And why did it feel like he was waiting? Just as the wind howled louder and the lights flickered, plunging her into total darkness, Jane felt a rush of icy fear creep upon her like a wave about to overtake. A chilling whisper slithered through the air, slicing into the silence. They didn't listen. She stood frozen, her children's small voices drifting back to her. She was their protector, but right now she felt anything but safe. The shadows crept closer, twisting with the shape of fear. Jane's world was unraveling as she faced a choice: step outside into the unknown, or hold on tight to the darkness behind her door. The storm raged, and with it, the heart of Elmwood shuddered under the weight of secrets buried too deep to ignore. The air outside was electric with tension, each breath Jane took felt heavy, thick with fear. She turned from the window, her pulse racing as she fought the urge to flee. No, she couldn't leave. Not with Clara and Max upstairs, blissfully unaware of the impending dread clawing at her sanity. The whisper hung in her mind, they didn't listen. Who hadn't listened? Was it them? Was it her? The shadows in the room felt alive, creeping in like smoke. She braced herself against the kitchen counter, fingers pressing into the cool surface. Thoughts spun wildly. What if Mr. Thompson wasn't he just whispering? What if he was calling something? Or someone? She shivered, the realization slamming into her that darkness wasn't he the enemy, it was the thing hiding within it that terrified her. With a flick of her wrist, Jane pushed the phone to her face, its light weak yet comforting. She needed to check on her children. Just one look. Heart hammering, she climbed the stairs quietly. Each creak of the floorboard seemed to scream in protest, exposing her movement to whoever or whatever was lurking outside. As she entered the dimly lit hallway, she could hear Clara's gentle breathing from the room at the end. Max was there too, their shadows shifting briefly on the wall, safe and innocent. The sight sent a wave of warmth through her, but it was quickly extinguished by a loud bang from the living room. Jane flinched, heart in her throat. Was that the wind? An animal? No, it was different. This was a sound intended to provoke fear. She took a breath, brushed her hair back, and pushed open the children's door just a crack, peeking inside. "Mommy?" Clara whispered, eyes fluttering open, confusion etching her little brow. "Sure everything's fine, sweetheart. Just stay quiet." Jane stepped out into the hallway, intent on investigating, though dread clawed at her heels. The living room was pitch black, her phone's light barely slicing through. The sound came again, a dull thud, then deep silence. Jane swallowed, the lump in her throat painful. Every instinct screamed for her to run, yet curiosity held her in place. She walked slowly, one foot in front of the other, the shadows pooling like dark ink on the floor. Peering around the corner, she couldn't help but feel the air change. It thickened, heavy with anticipation. The light from her phone caught the corner of the room, illuminating an overturned lamp and the couch pulled away from the wall. And then, she saw it. At the far edge of the room, the shadow of a figure hunched low, its outline undulating. In the flickering light, it seemed to shift, bowing and rising, as if beckoning her to come closer. "Who is there?" Jane's voice trembled, quivering against the void. No answer. Only a lingering resonance, like a chuckle cloaked in darkness, echoing off the walls. She stepped back, seeking refuge in the light of her phone, but the figure darted closer, darkness consuming more of the room. The air grew colder, wrapping around her like icy fingers. In a flash, she turned to the stairs, a move instigated by raw instinct. But before she could sprint back to safety, something gripped her wrist, pulling her back. Jane gasped, the world closing in. What was happening? Gravity itself felt like a torment, as she fought against whatever had ensnared her. Panic surged inside her, the din of her screams swallowed up by the ravenous dark. Then the voice broke through once more, clear and cold. "You should be listened." Before she could comprehend, everything went black, the silence pinning her down like the weight of 1,000 fears. The last thing she heard was the sound of children's laughter echoing from somewhere far away, and with it, a promise she was ready to face what awaited her on the other side of this darkness. Jane's eyes fluttered open, her heart pounding. The blackness felt thick, like a heavy fog. She blinked, struggling to make sense of her surroundings. Where was she? The familiar outlines of her living room were gone, replaced by an all-consuming shadow. Panic scraped at her insides. "Clara! Max!" She called, her voice cracking in the silence. There was no response, just the echo of her own fear reverberating back. She sat up, pushing against the cold ground, only to be met with the overwhelming sensation of dread, as if unseen eyes were watching her. She pressed her palms against her face, trying to shake off the fog, but it clung to her like tar. The laughter, it was still there, dancing on the edge of her mind. She could almost see Clara's bright smile flickering through the darkness. Armoring herself with the thought of her children, she scrambled to her feet. She lifted her phone, the dim light barely creating a bubble of illumination in the murk ahead. Shadows flickered at the edges of her gaze, seeming to swirl and twist. A shiver ran down her spine. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to move forward, each step laden with trepidation. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself, but the words felt hollow. In the distance, the laughter faded into a deep, low chuckle that sent ice coursing through her veins. "Mommy," a voice echoed near her, soft yet tinged with something unsettling, like a distant memory. She whirled around, squinting into the void. Was it Clara? "Clara? Where are you?" Jane rushed her words, anxious energy rippling through her. The darkness shifted, seeming to pulse in response. "Mommy, come play." The voice was ghostly now, echoing. It was her daughter's voice, but it felt wrong, warped like a twisted recording. Jane's gut churned. "Where are you?" "I'm coming." "Stay where you are." Without warning, something brushed against her leg. Jane gasped, stumbling back. The darkness coalesced, and she felt a breath on her neck, cold and foul. "Mommy," it was now an echo, a whisper that snaked around her mind. It felt familiar and alien all at once. Jane squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to wake up, to find herself back in her darkened living room with her children safe and sound. But the laughter returned, filling her with dread, and suddenly her phone flickered before dying. The darkness enveloped her, leaving her in a void of silence, then, without warning, sharp images pierced the blackness. Clara appeared before her, her little girl, eyes wide with fear. But then, the image morphed, Clara's face twisting, a grotesque mimicry of her daughter. "You should be listened," it chanted, the words spilling like poison. "No. Stop." Jane screamed, lunging forward, desperate to rescue the vision of her child. But as she reached out, Clara faded away, melting into the shadows like smoke. The darkness roared, crashing around her. The icy breath returned, whispering promises of despair as she spun around, her heart quaking. "Mommy?" The voice came again, closer now. "Don't leave me," and then Jane felt it, a hand grasping at her arm, holding on tight. She turned to face it, terror clawing at her throat. Was it Clara? Was Max here too? The figure stepped from the shadows. It was small, petite, yet something about it struck fear into her very soul. "Mommy, you said we would always be together." Terror washed over Jane, her senses screaming that something was horrifically wrong. No, what had she done? The figures loomed closer, and all at once, the laughter erupted around her, a cacophony of shrill giggles that enveloped her, shattering any sense of hope. And as the mocking laughter rolled over her like waves crashing upon the shore, Jane knew she was anything but alone. Who lurked in the shadows now? And could she ever escape the fate of disobedience? For once she did not listen, and for that, she would pay. But who, or what, was demanding her compliance? Jane's breath hitched in her throat as the small figure stepped further into the dim light filtering from her phone, revealing a grotesque expression, a twisted parody of her child's innocence. Its eyes glinted with mischief, too large, too hollow. "Mommy, come play," it repeated, its voice dripping sweetness laced with venom. Jane's heart raced, pounding against her rib cage as she took a step back, feeling the overwhelming urge to run, to escape whatever nightmare had ensnared her. "Clara? Max?" she begged, desperation slicing through her. The darkness loomed heavy, thick as a shroud, pressing down on her. She whipped around, searching for any sign of her children, praying for their familiar faces to flood her vision. But the shadows just chuckled in return, mocking her hope. "What have you done?" the creature asked softly, tilting its head as if it were genuinely curious. "You shouldn't have left us alone." The familiar sweetness of her daughter's voice twisted into something dark, like honey mixed with ash. It sent a chill crawling up Jane's spine. "No. I didn't mean to. I thought I could protect you." Her words came out in a frantic rush, echoing off the walls of the void surrounding her. "Please, where are you?" But the figure stepped closer, reaching out a small hand. Jane flinched. "We just want to play, Mommy." A flicker of movement caught her eye, breaking the keen tension. Shapes in the shadows darted around, beady eyes watching, stalking her. They loomed behind the figure, an unseen army of dissonant laughter and whispers. The phone's dim light flickered again, revealing the other forms, twisted and contorted. Some were small, like Clara, while others loomed larger, menacing and hungry. They beckoned her, each giggle slicing through her sanity like a knife. "Why won't you play, Mommy?" The creature whined, more insistent now, pressing forward. "You always said we'd be together. You broke the rules and now, look where you are." Jane managed to shake herself from the paralyzing fear. "No!" she shouted, more a plea than a declaration. "You're not my Clara, this is not my son." The thing laughed, a high-pitched cackle that echoed into the dark. "What does it matter? We are all that remains." A wave of nausea rolled over Jane as she took in the monstrous entities surrounding her. These were the manifestations of her guilt, her disobedience clawing back to consume her. She had broken the unspoken code, the midnight promises whispered in darkness. "Mommy, you have to help us." Another voice chimed in, echoing Clara's tone but layered with a sinister edge. "You can't leave me again, you can't." Jane stumbled back, her mind racing. What did it mean to be a good mother in the face of such terror? She thought she could protect them, but at what cost? "You're not real. You're just shadows." She screamed, willing the darkness to engulf her instead. To end this torment, the figures darted closer, their laughter melding into an unbearable crescendo. "But we are real, Mommy. More real than you'll ever understand." The ground trembled beneath her feet as the shadows began to close in, circling, feeding on her fear. She felt their coldness envelop her, their fingers grazing against her skin like ice. "Join us, Mommy," came the chorus, 1,000 voices. "Let us play." Jane hesitated, completely unraveling. Somewhere amidst the chaos, a flicker of determination ignited within her. She couldn't let them win, she wouldn't surrender to this nightmare, this darkness that sought to claim her. But as she readied herself to confront the writhing mass, the laughter grew louder, the shadows stronger, and all at once, they swallowed her whole, plunging her into an abyss where the lines between reality and nightmare blurred. As she spiraled deeper into the consuming void, one question echoed through her thoughts: what would it take to break free, and had she already lost everything in the process? The darkness laughed in an ever-tightening grip, and she knew she was running out of time. Jane was falling. The descent into the void twisted her stomach, every heartbeat thunderous in her ears. Darkness engulfed her, wrapping around her like tendrils of smoke. Her thoughts spiraled, each echo condensed into panic. Where were Clara and Max? Mommy, the voices echoed, a cacophony of her children's calls twisted into something deep and sinister. She felt their warmth, familiar yet impossibly distant. The rapid shift made her dizzy. Was there light ahead? She squinted, straining to catch a glimpse. A faint glow pulsed in the distance, flickering like a dying star. With a surge of adrenaline, she reached for it, clawing through the shadows, determined to break free from this nightmare. But as she neared, the light shifted. It morphed, shadowy fingers stretching out to grasp her. The illusion melted away, revealing a grim scene. An empty playground, rusty swings creaking in the wind, the ground bare and cracked, littered with memories that felt painfully personal. "Why did you leave us?" came a whisper, chilling her to the bone. The laughter of children filled the air, light and carefree, yet thick with disdain. They played games in the distance, laughter echoing, but their faces were obscured, warped by darkness. She could feel her heart racing, blood pounding in her ears like the warning bell of an approaching storm. "Come play with us," they taunted. "You've forgotten how every instinct screamed at her to flee, to sprint back into the depths of the void." "No. I want tea," she shouted into the darkness, shaking. "You're not my children. You're not real." The ground shifted beneath her feet, the once solid earth now treacherous and shifting. Shadows crawled toward her, merging with the laughter and darkening the paths before her. Fear gripped her like a vice. "Mommy, don't you want to play?" The sweet, sickly voice warped from the center of the playground, causing bile to rise in her throat, and in that moment, Jane felt the weight of her choices. Could she truly protect them? Had her moment of weakness damned them? As if sensing her turmoil, the shadows grew bolder, swirling around her like a tempest. "Help us, Mommy." Now, Clara's voice split through the cruel layers of terror, crystalline and clear. A flicker of light sparked inside her, a desperate hope. "Clara! Max!" She screamed, pushing through the hesitation. "I'm coming." But her words fizzled like smoke, merging with the malevolent laughter. The swinging shadows grasped at her wrists, pulling her deeper into their web of despair. "Join us," they cooed, the words slipping through her mind like ice. Something inside her snapped. Jane tore herself away from the creeping shadows, lunging toward the voice of her daughter. "I'm not afraid." But the world around her shuddered violently. She caught sight of them, wisps of their familiar forms breaking through the darkness, only to dissolve into a haze. Jane felt her power slipping, and the shadows seized the moment, their laughter crescendoing, forbidding her retreat. "Stay with us forever." But what did that mean? Would forever be a prison, or a rescue? Was the darkness a sanctuary, or a predator, waiting to feast upon her soul? The playground began to crumble, the laughter morphing into sinister howls. And then, it struck her, maybe this was her moment. Perhaps she could break the cycle. Before she could think, she lunged forward, tearing through the shadows that sought to hold her back. But light blazed behind her, blinding and brilliant, enveloping her in warmth she had forgotten. "Mommy! Save us!" Came the voices once more, a desperate plea drowning in the chaos. In that stark contrast to the dark, she scrambled forward, reaching for a truth she still clung to, a desperate redirection in the face of horrors she could no longer bear. "Hold on. I'm coming." But as the shadows pulled and laughed, they threatened to swallow her whole, light flickering precariously around her at the edge of the abyss. The moment stretched infinitely, the terror palpable. Would she reclaim her children from the clutches of this dark play? Until silence. Was it? The calm before the storm. Jane's breath caught as she realized she couldn't remember the way back. And suddenly, the darkness whispered secrets she wasn't ready to hear. What truth lay waiting, buried in the nightmares that had become her reality? Jane blinked in the silence, disoriented. The warmth of the light felt like a distant memory, evaporating before she could truly grasp it. All around her, shadows shifted, coiling like serpents, whispering secrets she feared to comprehend. "Mommy, don't be scared," a soft, familiar voice coaxed, but the tone was laced with mockery. She turned, desperate for Clara and Max, her heart pounding like a war drum. The shadows swirled, tightening their grip, tugging at her clothes, pulling her off balance. "Play. Forever," they crooned in unison, their giggles echoing off abandoned structures, twisting into something unholy. "No." Jane's voice cracked, the strength draining from her as she fought against the subtle pressure. "I'm not playing." Once again, she pressed forward. The ground beneath her felt like it was melting away, and every step seemed heavier than the last. Panic surged, her children had to be somewhere close. She couldn't lose them again. The swings, where laughter once danced in the air, creaked eerily now, rhythmic and sinister, a funeral dirge for the living. A chill crept into her bones as she found herself standing still, mesmerized by a shadow that elongated and flickered like a faulty light bulb. "Mommy, where are you?" The voice grew closer, more frantic, and she called out again, "Clara. Max." But the shadows flared, enveloping her shouts, distorting them until they twisted back at her with cruel laughter. The world darkened, and the flickering light blinked out completely, plunging her into an abyss. In the silence, a cold dread washed over her. The whispers had changed now, they were more discernible, more urgent. "You abandoned us and now we're lost. Forever. Clara. Max. Hurry," they urged, the shadows beckoning her deeper. A deep rumble echoed, trembling the ground. "Stay close." She shouted, dread pooling in her gut as she searched for them in the darkness. But twisted memories flashed through her mind, their last moments together, Max's laughter, Clara's shy smile. And then, her departure. A choice that rippled into something larger, deeper, that she couldn't control. The churning darkness fed on her guilt, every haunted corner whispering her failures. "Mommy, come back," they begged, fragile and small, and it sliced through her. With sudden fury, Jane screamed against the encroaching shadows, "I'm not afraid of you. I will find them." Her eyes locked on the flickering light once more, and she sprinted toward it, heart hammering. Each step fought against the cold grasp of the shadows, which writhed and hissed as if scrutinizing her resolve. But the light didn't stay steady, it pulsed erratically. The ground shattered beneath her, opening wide with an ominous crack, and Jane felt herself teetering on the brink of everything. The shadows drew back slightly, revealing a void that glimmered with the possibility of her children. "Take our hands, Mommy," came the voice again, sweet but eerie, urging. Their shapes began to solidify, emerging through the twisting shadows, beckoning with shimmering hands. But were they really her children, or were they just more phantoms wrapped in deceit? Jane hesitated, fear mingling with hope. I'm coming," she shouted, but doubt gnawed at her. What if they were here to deceive her, to lead her deeper into the darkness? In that instant, her vision blurred, and coldness spread through her limbs. The shadows thickened, pressing against her like a wall, suffocating in dark. "Choose, Mommy, us or the light." Jane's breath hitched as realization sank in. The shadows were not merely spirits but something far darker. Choices stripped away layers of truth, revealing the monstrous form of her past mistakes. Without warning, a shriek pierced through, a sound sharp enough to stop her in her tracks. It was Clara, her voice a ribbon of pure terror, followed by Max's frantic cries. "Mommy! Help!" The melody of their pleas clashed with the shadows' laughter, creating a terrifying symphony of distress. Fractured moments of clarity flickered, thoughts of them, of her, everything cascading into a decision that had long been avoided. "Please," she begged into the suffocating darkness, "bring them to me." But the ground quaked, and she saw a chasm open wide, a dark promise of despair and destruction. "Make your choice." The shadows roared, hunger palpable in the air thick with fear. And there she stood, poised between light and the dark, a choice that felt impossible. With the final flicker of light almost extinguished, Jane felt time stretch, her heart racing as the weight of indecision bore down. What should she do? What would she sacrifice to save them? The darkness pulsed, awaiting its decision, and the last echo of their voices faded. In desperation, she whispered, "What now?" But the shadows answered with silence, and the void yawned wider. The silence was deafening. Jane stood there, her heart thrumming like a trapped bird, longing to break free but too afraid to move. The shadows encircled her, teasing her with the soft echoes of her children's voices, now fluttering like shadows themselves, fading ever so slightly. "Choose, Mommy," they whispered, and the chilling sound just wrapped around her throat, tightening until she couldn't breathe. With every passing second, the pressure mounted. The darkness itself seemed to draw nearer, brushing against her skin like icy fingertips. She could feel every failure, every moment she could have done something different with Clara and Max flooding back. "Please," it came out as a breathless whisper, carried away by the darkness. "I just want them back." In her chest, a swell of desperation rose. Where were they? Was she even looking at her children, or was this a cruel game designed to gnaw at her sanity? The specters before her tantalized and mocked, flaring with shadows that flickered like badly tuned television static. Suddenly, an overpowering heat surged from the chasm. Jane staggered back, caught off guard by the wave of dread that rushed through her. The brittle ground beneath her quaked violently. "Mommy! We're here." Clara's voice pierced through the haze, more vivid now, filled with a child's potent fear. It felt too close, too real. The sound seared into her heart like a brand as Jane's resolve began to solidify. She leaned forward, fingers grasping at the silhouettes. "I'm coming." But the shadows rippled violently, morphing into grotesque faces warped in torment, their eyes hollow as they reached back at her with claw-like fingers. "Stay with us, play forever," they hissed, their laughter like nails on chalkboard. Jane pulled her gaze away, staring at the flickering light that throbbed with life, a beacon amidst the chaos. It called to her, promising safety. "No," she barked defiantly. "Not now. Mommy." It was Max's voice, strained, choked with a dread that twisted Jane's stomach. "Help." The weight of her indecision bore down heavily. She could feel the tethers of guilt, the threads woven through her memories with her children, tugging her in that direction. A chilling realization washed over her. She had lost them before, hadn't she? But losing them again seemed unbearable. The shadows whispered anew, their voices dark, "What if you never find them? What if you cannot return to the light?" Her breath caught in her throat. What if this was just the beginning? "Choose." They crooned, voices dripping with malicious excitement. Jane dug her nails into her palms, torn between the void and the flickering light. Was the light simply a mirage? What if it led her away from Clara and Max forever? "Come to us." The shadows urged, spiraling closer, weaving deceitful tales into her against the beckoning hope. "We will take care of you forever." She blinked against the encroaching dark, memories swirling like autumn leaves in a storm. The laughter, the hugs, the smells of warm-baked cookies on the holiday mornings, each one threatened to pull her closer to the edge. "Now!" She screamed, terror of being completely submerged challenging her every instinct. She pushed against the shadows, refusing to submit to the suffocating grip surrounding her. Just then, a blinding flash lit up the surrounding void, throwing everything into stark relief. Shapes emerged from the dark, forms that merged with her memory, faces she knew and yet felt utterly alien. The shadows recoiled, shrieking and thrashing, afraid of the light. But as everything crystallized around her, Jane cried out, "No! Clara! Max!" And in that second, her heart stopped. Before her, suspended in that beam of light, the faces shifted again, twisted and masked, no longer resembling the innocent children she loved. Dark grins spread across their faces, grotesque and ghoulish, their eyes gleaming with something sinister. The ground shook violently, answering her horror. "Join us!" they chanted, their voices twisted into an unholy song. Jane stumbled as the force threatened to overwhelm her. But a spark ignited deep within her gut, something primal, something human. "I'd rather die than live in your darkness," she screamed, her voice breaking through the din. Just as she gathered the courage to take the first step toward the light, a chilling hush fell over the realm. What now? The sudden stillness felt deadly, the room alive with anticipation as she took a breath deeper than she thought she could. Then, in a split-second shift, screams erupted, bouncing off the encroaching walls. "Choose!" they shouted again, their tone furious and desperate, a tidal wave of anger cascading forward like a storm. But Jane, heart pounding, met the eyes of that void and whispered fiercely, "I will not choose darkness over light." But would her defiance cost her everything? The shadows stirred violently, preparing to unleash themselves, hungering once more. As she found herself standing at the edge of the light, something dark loomed behind her, and Jane realized that whatever she had done might not only affect her but could forge a fate far worse for Clara and Max. In the chaos, a chilling question hung in the air: could she save them, or would saving herself mean losing them forever? Jane's heart raced, the vessel of dread spilling over with every moment. The shadows writhed, as if sensing her fear. She could feel them creeping closer, the air thickening with the oppressive weight of their presence. Was it madness to think she could fight them? "Mommy!" The hollow voices twisted, growing louder, forming a cacophony that sliced through her resolve. "Choose us!" She shut her eyes tightly, searching for the glimmer of hope that had anchored her through the darkness. Clara and Max needed her, she could not yield. Yet their voices threaded through the shadows like jagged knives, splintering her will. Her skin crawled, the icy touch wrapping around her throat like barbed wire. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the monstrous shapes, and she caught a glimpse of their true forms. It was a blend of her children's features, distorted and warped, the innocent love twisted into something unrecognizable. The shapes smiled, revealing teeth too sharp, too menacing. "Forever," they whispered, the promise dripping with malevolence. "No!" she cried, her voice cracking under the strain. The choice clawed at her, tightening like a noose. Could she let go of the light that beckoned? Hope was tough, but despair was a weight she'd grown accustomed to, too heavy to bear. "Mommy!" Their cries sharpened, desperation spilling through like hot wax. "Help us!" They were fading, her children diminishing into mere echoes, and she could not allow that to happen. She had to act. One deep breath. She took a step back from the shadow's grasp, looking past the torment and pain they offered. The light shimmered in response, becoming more vibrant. It pulsed, inviting her to reach again, and her heart screamed for her children to come home. Suddenly, the shadows morphed into a whirlwind, swirling, pulling at her hair, her clothes, her sanity. "Join us!" They screamed, rage boiling, striking chords of chaos that resonated through the cavernous space. She could feel it threatening to erase everything she was. A surge of anger coursed through her, solidifying her determination. "No! I'm not yours!" The entities shrieked, their forms twisting further, grotesque faces locking into place. A voice, deeper than the rest, rumbled from the heart of the maelstrom. "Make your choice, Jane. Lose them or lose yourself." Reality warped around her, blurring the line between truth and nightmare. She pressed her arms against her sides, grounding herself. "Choose me, Clara. Choose me, Max." She shouted, willing the bond of love to breach the void that separated them. A moment or a lifetime passed. The bewildered darkness paused, static energy vibrating in the air. In a rush of adrenaline, she lunged, breaking the hold of despair. "Look!" she shouted, her voice raw and frantic, cutting through. "Remember the parks. The laughter." The memories streamed forth, tangible in the air like gusts of wind, swirling the shadows into a frenzied dance. Elation sparkled in the dark as screams of rage and anguish filled the void. They twisted, pulling back from her as she fought against them with the thoughts of her beautiful children, embracing that love fiercely. The ground trembled again, a deeper quake this time. The shadows screeched, their forms growing palpable in agony. "No! I won't give up!" she screamed, the words bursting forth, igniting the darkness. "I choose love. I choose my children." The shadows recoiled, breaking apart, their shape flaring and flickering like the last embers of a long fading fire. The light behind her emanated warmth, urging her forward, and in that moment she sprinted. But just as she inhaled deeply, aiming towards the radiant escape, laughter erupted from behind. It was not the laughter of her children, it was sinister, shattering. "This isn't over," the dark voice taunted, echoing ominously behind her. Panic flooded her veins. Was this escape just a trick? Would the shadows follow her into the light? Before she could turn back, the space shifted violently, imploding with a force that threatened to swallow her whole. The chilling echo of their laughter rang in her ears and the light dimmed, casting her into uncertainty. As she reached the edge of the light, her heart pounded with dread. What awaited her there? Which side of darkness or light would she truly find? And as the shadows whispered sweet promises of despair, the gap grew narrower, and she had to face the truth. Was she fleeing or was she being hunted? The air crackled around Jane, heavy with oppressive tension. She felt the light slip away, her hope dimming along with it. The shadows behind her bristled, their laughter morphing into an echo of her children's voices, taunting, teasing, deepening her terror. "Mommy, where are you?" The plea twisted her insides, reeling her back like a frazzled hook. No. She couldn't listen. Not now. The instinct to run forward surged through her, but the gnawing dread chained her feet to the ground. She knew what the shadows wanted, they would use her love against her. The ground shifted, a new rhythm pulsed beneath her feet, vibrating with an ominous beat. Was the earth alive? Was it hungry? She could sense it like an animal waiting to pounce, its breath hot and close. "Mommy, help us!" The voices morphed once more. It was Clara and Max's fear mixed with something darker, something that clawed at her mind, urging her to turn around. They were not gone, they were trapped, twisting in agony between hope and despair. Jane dared to glance back, her heart racing like a drum. What she saw filled her with sheer horror. The shadows had solidified, coalescing into a grotesque parade of familiar shapes. There were faces recognizable yet horrifyingly wrong, shifting in twisted mockery of her children. They reached for her, their hands gnarled and elongated, drawing her deeper into their fathomless void. Forever they echoed, chanting in unison. A surge of rage ignited inside her. "No. You don't get to keep them." With a breath born from desperation, Jane hurled herself toward the exit of light. She could see it now, brighter than before, flickering like a beacon. Her arms outstretched, as if reaching for her children. Seconds turned into minutes as she sprinted, every heartbeat a countdown against the enveloping shadows. But as her fingers brushed the light, it flickered, and in that moment, the laughter stopped. Silence fell like a heavy shroud. Just as abruptly, the light twisted, darkening, and the warmth evaporated. She stumbled forward, gripped by a new wave of panic. "Follow us, Mommy." Their voices came from everywhere, flooding her senses, echoing in her mind, a relentless chorus of anguish. Her stomach twisted, her breath caught, the darkness pressed in on all sides, an unyielding grip that suffocated. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted, and Jane found herself unmoored. The light transformed into a blizzard of sparks that enveloped her body. Desperate to cling to her sanity, she whirled in place, feeling the fabric of her reality tear apart. What was real? What was illusion? The ground shifted beneath her, crumbling like brittle glass, but she wouldn't yield. "Clara! Max!" she cried, her voice trembling against the deafening chaos. "I will find you." Yet, the overwhelming shadows responded with a new menace. "You're ours." They growled, and their hunt resumed, a swirling tempest closing in around her. As Jane pushed forward, arms flailing against the blur of black, she felt something cold brush against her, an icy hand. Just as fear reached a crescendo, she thrust herself into the heart of the light, surrendering to its embrace. But it felt wrong. Instead of lifting her, it crushed her down, plunging her back into an abyss. She fell, spiraling through the darkness, hands clawing at the air, desperately hoping to grasp anything solid. Her screams echoed in the void, swallowed by the sinister laughter that erupted around her. What had she unleashed? And with the last shred of awareness, she heard it, the distorted echo of her children's laughter, now laced with something far more sinister. "You can't escape us, Mommy." It rested somewhere deep in her chest, a seed of dread that promised this was not the end. What awaited her in the shadows? Would she emerge stronger, or would she be consumed entirely? Jane's world spun around her like a dizzying kaleidoscope, the darkness swirling until it formed the shape of her worst nightmares. She floated, weightless, grasping at shadows that clawed at her limbs, pulling her deeper into the dark. "Clara! Max!" The names tore from her throat, desperate, echoing off unseen walls. In those haunting moments, she felt the icy grip of malevolence tighten. It whispered secrets that danced at the edges of her sanity. "You are lost, and so are they." But then, a flicker of warmth flicked across her skin, like sunlight cutting through tendrils of smoke. The thought of Clara and Max became her lifeline. Their laughter, their small hands in hers, they were worth fighting for, worth every ounce of strength she could muster. "No!" she screamed defiantly into the void. "I will rescue them." With every ounce of determination blazing in her heart, she willed herself to stand against the crushing weight of despair. The shadows flinched at her resolve, shrinking back like dark ink against the light of a candle. You think your love can save you? They hissed, their voices a sinister symphony of ridicule. But Jane didn't shatter. She took a deep breath, channeling the memories of life before this nightmare, the warmth of her children nestled under blankets, the smell of home-cooked meals, the comfort of simple moments. You are not my children. You're just monsters wrapped in my worst fears. She shouted, banishing her doubts. The shadows recoiled again, their laughter turning to fuming rage. You abandoned us. They wailed, their twisted forms shimmering in the flickering light. But Jane stood firm, waiting for the moment to act. No. I will find them. And with that conviction, she sprinted through the encroaching dark, determined to breach the threshold of light ahead. It pulsed like a heartbeat, growing stronger as she raced. The shadows writhed behind her, furious screeches mingling with the echoes of Clara and Mac's mommy. Help! Pushing against the fear threatening to drown her, Jane reached out, desperate fingers stretching toward the light. Hold on, I'm coming. The dazzling glow enveloped her. Warmth, safety, love. The light surged through her like a tidal wave. In a blinding instant, she passed through the barrier, collapsing into a serene white space that felt alive and pulsating. There was no fear here, no lurking shadows. This was a sanctuary, a place where love reigned. Clara. Max. She called, heart hammering in her chest. Suddenly, the air shimmered, the light revealing two figures at the heart of it. Clara and Max stood there, innocent and bright, laughter spilling from their lips like crystal chimes. The sight pulled the tension from Jane's shoulders, tears streaming down her face. I found you. But the shadows loomed, twisting like restless spirits, angling toward this newfound light. You cannot have them. They thundered, coalescing into a foreboding mass. Jane's heart plunged. Clara. Max. She cried, instinctively rushing to them. In her desperate embrace, warmth enveloped them, filling the void with possibility. Remember the times we shared? The laughter. She held their hands tight, shielding them from the shadows. Mommy, don't let them take us. Clara pleaded, her small voice quaking with emotion. Jane felt the chill of darkness creeping around the edges of their light, trying to snatch them away. But Jane knew what she had to do. We're not afraid. She declared, fighting against the pulling shadows. Together, we are stronger. Her heart surged with the love she felt for her children, an unyielding shield. The shadows howled louder, thrashing against the light, but Jane held firm. You will not take my family. She lifted her chin, grounding herself in every memory they made together, each laughter, each bedtime story, fueling her defiance. Suddenly, the darkness lurched back as if repelled by an unseen force. Jane could feel their fear in the way they shrieked, hesitation creeping into their chants. No, we are the shadows. You belong to us. But Jane pressed on, every heartbeat echoing like a clarion call, not anymore. The light blazed around them, radiating hope and love like a shield, and with a final, triumphant shout, she directed that pure strength toward the shadows. You cannot have us. We choose each other, and we will never let go. In one final bid, the shadows began to unravel, disintegrating into a mass of whispers that faded into silence. As the echoes of darkness dissolved into the void, Jane breathed deeply, the air suffused with golden warmth. She held Clara and Max close, enveloped in the joy of reunion. We're safe now, she whispered, feeling every trace of fear slip away into the ether. Their laughter danced back into the air, a sweet melody that seemed woven from pure sunlight. Jane felt a sense of peace settle around them, like a protective cocoon. Mommy, will we always be together? Max's innocent voice slipped through the contented silence. Always, Jane promised, her heart swelling with love. She glanced around this serene space, feeling grateful for the silence, for the calm. They had faced the darkness and won. With a deep breath, Jane took her children's hands, leading them forward into this new chapter. There was light ahead, and now they were free to explore it together, unburdened by fears or shadows. As they stepped into that bright expanse, Jane felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had triumphed over the darkness, reminded of the bonds that could withstand even the scariest storms, and at that moment, she truly knew the light would always guide them home. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for our captivating tales.